best practices in terms of collaborating with these independent intermediaries. How can we provide them technology? How can we provide them better infra? How can we provide them a better platform? How can we reduce inefficiencies? Not very dissimilar to what a cab aggregators did in India, right? You would come effectively, an auto driver or a taxi driver is still doing the same thing what he was doing earlier. Is just doing it more efficiently, making more money in the process of doing that. And that's what effectively we have set out to do. So a large part of our ecosystem is driven by these independent intermediary agents. We work very, very closely with them. Couple of our business verticals like mortgage have grown on the back of that. So 2/3 of our mortgage business, we move today almost 3,000 crores a month. 2/3 of that actually comes from the aggregation of demand by these independent intermediary agents who coordinate with our platform on multiple other touch points for the consumer journey as well. So we believe where the single biggest impact has been or will be or continues to be is not who is servicing the consumer, whether a large aggregated startup like ours is servicing a consumer, or a small intermediary agent is servicing a consumer, or a consumer is speaking to the consumer directly. I think the large differential there is how that communication is happening, how the data is flowing, how the information is flowing, how do we do the comparative analysis. Like, for example, India has been a very opaque market in terms of the data. We were the first platform to democratize the data. Today, you go to spareyards.com, you go to any building, you will be able to see last 20, 30, 40 recorded transactions transparently. What was the price points? What was the rental lease transaction? What was where the transaction concluded at? Now, giving that power of data in the hand of the consumer so that consumer is able to take a better decision, the consumer experience is much better, is far more critical. And that's effectively what we as a platform have been working over the last few years.
And I think I'll here pretty much agree with both. And I think if you really sit down any tech-enabled startup or business, right? End of the day, we all tend to become ecosystem players and platforms, right? We are not really focused, and we are not. Our focus is not really to kind of develop anything out of scratch, but really the focus is to bring in a community of customers and providers together, and to really orchestrate that experience in a manner which transforms that experience and both drives on the experience side as well as efficiency side. I mean, that's what tech startups do, right? Essentially. And whether it's, as Tanuj also mentioned, it's not really about replacing the existing service provider, but more about empowering them, right? For us as well. And whatever I have seen in at least last 3-4 different startups that I've been engaged with, and my overall life in the US as well as in India, if you really want to build a scalable model, right, you really need to focus on how your customers are getting the services from their existing suppliers and make it really transformed and experience, get them an experience which is really disrupted, rather than disrupting the service class itself, right? So we already have people who are working in the tier 2, tier 3 cities. It's not that you can replace them and bring in more people. You are not going to get more people completely out of here. So your focus has to be in terms of how you can empower, how you can enable these people to their experience, because these people have not been exposed to what is globally good, right? So what you can do as a tech startup and a tech platform, what you can really do is you can provide technology which can be accessed anywhere. You can build technology sitting in a one office in one location, and that technology is available to everybody across the globe, right? You can provide content and processes which you can standardize. You can define a way of working which is again standardized. You can provide at least an aggregation model of all the components that are required to provide a service. And then you can provide that as a platform to people who are on the last mile, who are in front of the customers, who are engaging with the customers and delivering those things. That piece is something which will always remain peer-to-peer, person-to-person, and I think that's something which Tanuj mentioned, that even in US, which is a much more mature market, end of the day, the transaction is happening between one person and another person, right? In India also, whether it's on the transaction side or consumption side, you have to have that personal engagement, because it's again a big ticket size purchase, right? It's not an impulse purchase, whatever you buy in real estate, right? Whether you're buying a transaction, you're buying a piece of furniture, these are not impulse purchases where you go and just something on online and then do it, right? So this requires a level of trust and comfort to be built. And that trust and comfort can only be built when the person sitting in front of you is there, but is there empowered with a lot of the technology and content and process which is empowering them from behind, which is we as a business are doing, and which is what seen a lot of the good businesses and good platforms also doing. When it comes to the customer side, I think you started with that question. The customer side, that's another mega trend happening apart from.
I want to ask this question because data privacy, especially in prop tech, right? Because the data is sensitive in nature because you guys property related information. How are you guys dealing with data privacy in that particular situation? How are you guys handling it each?
So data, the data what we are talking about here and powering consumers with, it's all public data we are talking about. The data was always available in the public domain. It just was not digitized, was not it was available in silos. Like the registrar office records are all public, but they are available in silos. So effectively, the effort was more towards trying to integrate and digitize the data and put on a common consumer platform for consumer to learn. But having said that, we do take significant precaution in protecting the consumer personal details. So when we talk about the transaction records, we are effectively talking about the price points of the asset class. We are talking about the data which could influence the transaction for for a particular consumer. We are not talking about releasing the consumer personal records, whether whichever part of the counterparty the consumer sits in. So very clear that in with respect to all the data privacy tools, whatever is the public data, how do we democratize the data?
Yeah, I think largely there. See, there are three types of data that we deal with. One is customer personal data, the second is social data, and the third one is transactional data. Right? Transactional data, I would actually say that it's a much better situation where you have a lot more transactional data actually getting in the public domain, right? Especially if you see the real estate, one of the lacuna in real estate has been a lot of opaqueness about data and transactional data, and that's also with a lot of the negative impacts of parallel economy coming into play there, right? So it is actually good that with advent of technology on across the value chain in construction, real estate, software, even going into the interiors and that kind of space, a lot more data is actually getting created and a lot more data is actually getting digitized and made public so that you can have the transactional data available. What you really want to be very careful about is the customer data and the social data of customers, which is what. So, I mean, as an example, you need to know that this piece was bought in this much value. You probably don't need to know the phone number of who bought it, right? Or some, so, and you need to be very clearly aware that, okay, this was purchased at this level because there are GST implications, there is an entire transparency of digitized economy implications that is happening here. There's, of course, now the cash economy is thankfully getting significantly down in this sector as well, which is what is very much required for the sector to be kind of coming out into the digitized world. So as long as you are keeping the social data and the personal data of the consumer in within privacy silos, and that's something which is happening across the world. I mean, the Facebooks of the world are doing it. Google is leading focus on doing it. We are also very clear and conscious of the fact that while we have the data in terms of what is bought and what services transacted is there in public domain, and the price points are getting transparent, and the transactions are getting known and transparent, who is making the transaction, and all of that is not available in public domain. Of course, it will be available to the authorities as and when required, but not really in a public domain where you start getting spams coming out of it.
Fine, understood. So, Divyanshu, you mentioned about how consumers are expecting more sophisticated solutions, right? They want more, more features and more data shown to them, so they can take better decisions. I want to talk about this particular type of data wherein there's virtual interaction with the urban landscape, especially of a city, where we use satellite imagery and photogrammetry. Can this be scaled globally? And is this tech viable in India? What are your guys' thoughts?
Uh, so it's actually very interesting when you look at the consumer class in India, and I have seen this not just in India but in entire emerging market, whether it's Latin America, places like Brazil and Mexico, or places like Indonesia and Thailand and Indian tier two, tier three. About my consultant life, I saw that a lot of these places, the customers are actually more aware of technology that is really transforming rather than even the service providers. And a lot of these places, the customers are actually kind of driving you towards it. So whether you talk about a visualization technology of how my office or home or my property is going to look like, you will, if you're not doing it, your customers will start telling you why you're not doing it, because I have seen on Insta or I've seen on Twitter or I've seen in somewhere in US something like that is happening. I mean, just last couple of days I have interacted with a lot of US businesses which kind of work with us in figuring out that how do we actually what we are building in US or what we are building in different other places in terms of the breakthrough technology or visualization, or even I would say there's a lot of drone related technology that is happening, right? All of that, how do you really scale up in places like India where typically what they think is that the technology is not getting paid for? Now, the whole key to it is while you should not look at it as a SaaS problem or saying that, okay, I have built this piece of technology. Now, how do I get paid for using this technology? Your focus is not on selling tech, but on selling experience and the solution end of it. If you are integrating that technology into your experience and the solution of the real product that you sell, and in this business, we are actually selling the most real product, right? Not for nothing, it's called real estate, right? So if you are using tech for the sake of selling tech, then the business cases and the use cases and the economy will typically not tend to work. But when you are using the tech to actually drive the consumer experience, then because of the ticket size, and I mean, we are in a fairly large asset class, right? So a couple of basis points of tech usage when it transforms your experience, when it drives higher transaction volumes, when it drives higher conversions, when it actually starts to impact certain metrics, then it pays for itself. So I think that's the key of how we can all really leverage technology not for the sake of selling tech, but to transform experience. That's where it is.
No, sorry, Divyansh. What? I was just saying this topic is very close to my heart because one of our subsidiaries, Prop VR platforms, we have been investing heavily into that. In fact, not just in terms of the product, in terms of the innovation as well. We have filed 17 patents. We have been granted 3 patents over the last year. We continue to do a lot of groundbreaking work, path-breaking work in terms of how visualization needs to be immersed with the real-life experiences. So one of the favorite marks here is the metaverse oblique digital twin solution. Now I'll give you a very interesting example. We have done that in as a beta in Dubai for a particular area. Now imagine you want to buy a home, sell a home, rent a home, or an office. You go to various search and discovery platforms, ours or some other platform. You would today what you do is see listings, right? Now ignoring the problem of the fake listings and the fake data. The challenge is there is no visualization there. The challenge is you don't know how to shortlist apart from the location per se, and unless you have seen that particular micro market. Now imagine that entire search and discovery listing data is being transposed on the digital twin of a city, where you want to buy something in Mumbai, in Andheri. You would be your avatar digital, and it does not need VR glasses. It's a simple pixel streaming experience. Your digital avatar would be walking down the street with there will be real life digital replica of the real life building on the both sides, listings popping up of where particular inventory is available and where is not. So that totally transforms the search and discovery experience of a consumer. We very strongly believe that that is the future. 5 years down the line, your 2D search and discovery platforms in real estate won't exist. and everyone, it will become a need, it will become a necessity. What Divyanshu said, the consumers will force the industry to move towards that, because that's what the consumers will demand. It's happening at various stages in various parts of the world. Like I said, we have already gone live with a particular catchment in Dubai. We are now expanding that to Dubai. We are building a similar solution for Toronto as a city. India India will be sometime over the next couple of years. But to answer your question, Shrey, can this be done for India? 100%. Will this be done for India? 100%. It's a matter of time.
Great. That was actually about to be my next question about VR and AR, and it's great that you pointed it out. Divyanshu, how are you guys going about investing in VR? How are you guys gonna enhance the experience of a consumer using VR? Anything that you guys are working on?
So I would not specifically talk about VR as such, but broadly in terms of visualization. See, it's again a very interesting quirk of the real estate industry, because uh, other than, let's say, if you're buying something almost like a ready to move in property, anything else that you buy, it's a very high impact, very high value, very high environment purchase, but you are essentially buying into a dream. You don't see it till you get it, right? So, for example, in our business, we will tell you that, okay, we'll get you a very nice looking, great office created, right? And you are about to enter into a journey of 2, 3 months or whatever time it takes to get the office done. But you are essentially buying into the trust and the credibility that we have as a business. Because it's very difficult for you to finally see what you are going to get before you get it. So visualization in this industry, because of the fact that you are buying a very high volume purchase, because of the fact that that product that you are going to buy is not existing when you make the purchase decision. Most of the cases, as I said, the only exception being when you actually go to a finalized, finished property and you buy it then and there. Other than that, everything else is a dream buying, right? You're selling a dream, you're buying a dream, which is where visualization becomes super critical. I mean, one of the examples of visualization that Tanuj talked about, that visualization is there, but it's also about futuristic visualization. So what we are doing is in our business, focusing a lot on instant visualization, instant like real-time 3D visualization, real-time walkthroughs, and not just that, but also connecting that into how you can change things. Because in our business, if you can change, let's say, the color of the wall, everything else changes, right? So if you build up very specific visualization techniques and tools based on gaming influences, based on other stuff as well, so what happens is that your buying decision gets transformed. What used to take 3 or 4 weeks for you to finalize the decision can be done in a day. Now, the key crux there is how you can convert that visualization in the virtual world. And I think Tanuj also mentioned the virtual world visualization to the real world, what you are going to get. So in a virtual world, you might see a particular type of office or particular type of home. But in the real world, what is the furniture that is going to deliver that, right? How do you connect a virtual visualization to a real product? And then what is the commercial impact of that product? So if it's going out of your budget, if what if you change this particular furniture and particular thing and you can get a different commercial out of it? So how do you impact the visual and the material and the commercial put together through digital is where the entire focus is, and that's why we are working on a lot of technology to cut down on the overall buying cycle, cut down on the overall uncertainty about what you're going to get, and really transform the experience at the first place. That's where we are working on a lot of tech to bring it up.
Okay. Okay. So we've discussed about how we to enhance the experience, but customer interaction, especially in prop tech, is often limited to only the transaction. How do you guys maximize return on investment on your interaction with consumers over a longer period of time? How do you guys plan to attraction, increase the time retention among consumers in prop tech?
So Shreya, this is the reason we have been hell-bent on building a full-stack ecosystem, and we have been speaking about it very, very vocally that the consumer journey is so integrated and intertwined that to ensure that you give a flawless experience, you need to be able to give a gold standard experience across categories. So right from the search and discovery to the transaction, what you're speaking about, the same consumer going through the mortgage, the same consumer when the asset gets delivered. How do we manage the home renovations? How do we manage the property management? How does consumer speak to the various stakeholders on the? I'm only speaking to the residential piece. I'm sure it will be far better to speak on the commercial piece. But how do we engage with the consumer on that multiple touch points within that journey is very, very critical. There are real-time benefits, not just from the experience, giving a better experience. The CACs go down significantly. The same consumer gets remonetized at multiple levels. So it's a win-win situation. There are huge network effects for the platform. There are insane experience enhancements for a consumer. And there's a significant chunk of the revenue which you would have missed as a platform if you were not talking about and playing those categories. And more importantly, the scale and the operating leverage kicks in because of those end-to-end integrated platform.
Pretty much. So again, I would just go back to what I recently said. We in most business, and I think Tanuj and I would agree on this, and there's a lot of other people who will say this. We are not really creating businesses to drive transactions, right? Transaction. It's the transactional approach to building business is very 90s approach. It's not even in 2000. So we are all creating communities. We are all creating ecosystems. And communities and ecosystems, the beauty of them is that they don't stop at one transaction, right? So you have upstream impacts, you have downstream impact, you have lateral impact. So for example, when what we are seeing in our business is a lot of people will come and say, okay, we want to get a good office, but can you also help in leasing? Now we may not be doing leasing, and that's not our focus, but that's what we are already seeing. So there are people who will want to find the place. There are people who want to say, okay, what about flex and managed space model, right? What about, because once you get into a commercial space, you occupy that for a period of time, right? What about maintenance of that space? What about renovation, right? Then you can also engage into a lot of other services, and the entire ecosystem opens up. What we are about, and I think every business is about, is through a particular value proposition, you acquire a customer, right? Now, we are acquiring a customer for a particular benefit and a particular value proposition, but that customer acquisition doesn't stop there. That customer is the same customer who is going to require 20 other services throughout the life cycle of using that service. So if a customer in Tarun's case is, let's say, buying a home, in the home segment, he or she will require like 50 other things just related to the home. Forget about other stuff, right? And once you have acquired that customer, once you have very intimate data on the customer and understanding of the customer of the purchase behavior, because you acquired that for a very high impact purchase. Same thing goes for an office purchase or an office interiors or home interiors or all of that stuff. Everywhere you will see you have acquired a customer for a very high value, high impact purchase, and where you have been really involved with the customer and you acquire a lot of data. Now, how you create a community around it where other people can leverage that data, of course, with the privacy silos being there. That's what is going to determine how effective you are as a business also. Because at the end of the day, if you just want to be transactional, your business will never have the non-linear scalability that we all really talk about, right? So we'll all be creating ecosystems in different ways. Strategies could be different. The vision is going to remain pretty much the same for the industry.
So catering one consumer, so we can build a network from that consumer, right? I think that's what you guys mentioned. Want to know about what do you guys think about many consumers in one asset? Like you guys are, giving one consumer options to choose from many assets. What are you guys' thoughts on fractional ownership? Many owners, many consumers, one asset. Instruments like REITs, right? India has not seen a lot of REITs recently, but the Western countries are seeing a lot of REITs. So how do you think PropTech is going to enable fractional ownership? What are your guys' thoughts on it?
Obviously, a lot of regulatory frameworks are being implemented around that. In fact, there have been a swift action by the regulator in announcing certain regulations which are good for the retail consumer. But broadly, what does a fraction mean? It effectively creates liquidity. One of the biggest lacunas in playing PropTech as an investment asset class, purely investment class, has been the lack of liquidity, lack of retail options. Now, commercial is a very good example. Now, typically, commercial historically was the hotbed for HNI consumers in terms of the large tickets. What a fraction does, is effectively brings a retail play. You could break down a particular asset into 100 different tranches, and assuming it ticks a certain boxes on the regulatory compliances, you could offer it for a retail consumer. It's a high yield product. Consumers in India, you don't make high yields in residential assets. You barely make 3 to 3.5%. That's the top. So in commercial, you could end up making 8 to 9%, and that's a very good diversification to the portfolio playing real estate. This is effectively what REITs do. The key difference between REITs and a fraction is REITs would be multi-asset frameworks. Fraction to an extent is a single asset framework, but eventually fraction gravitates towards becoming a REIT over a period of time. And we believe this will become huge, not just in India, actually even globally. And this is early days for fraction as an asset class per se, even though REITs have been there for fairly very long, but solo asset fractions have not been there for very long, and it's only now coming into the play. So over the next 10-15 years, you will see proliferation of fractions. You will see a lot of regulatory frameworks changing around it, a lot of retail participation happening. That would add a new flavor to how do we play real estate as a pure investment class.
Yep. On the consumption side of it, I would just go a bit tangential and say that, look, this is something which is happening quite a lot, especially in commercial segments. I mean, what you think of, let's say, as flex space or managed office or co-working, the phenomenon on the consumption side of it. I'm not talking about the fact that who is owning the property, but how the property is being used. This has been a rage in terms of fractional ownership, or I would even say almost like a pay as you go drink by the drink ownership kind of a model that you already have seen. So it's asset light model. It is creating a different type of economy in terms of who is the owner of the property, who is the actual owner of the services, and who is consuming the services, and who is consuming the property. That's something which is happening quite a lot. And I think if you look at that model itself has been evolving, whether you take co-working like a WeWork model, or to a managed office, to a flex office, to a office on demand services. So those kind of things have been really transforming the consumption end, which is making the actual consumer asset light and creating a different intermediary between the real estate owner or the real estate developer and the actual consumer of the service. So there is an intermediary which is coming in and saying, okay, I am going to be creating the property, I am going to be managing the property, but I'm not going to be consuming it myself, right? So that's something which is happening a lot, and we are also working with a lot of that segment. That segment also has been a lot stressed because of the various things that have happened in the last 2 years with COVID and stuff like that coming in, and the demand moving really work from home and all that kind of stuff coming in. But if you really see, not owning an asset or owning an asset with a very strong caveat and mobility around the asset, or owning fraction of the asset is something on the consumption side of it has already been there. And I think it's going to grow much more as even people, big enterprises move towards tier 2, tier 4 and all that stuff as well. Because a lot of the investments, people would not want to keep the big real estate on their balance sheet, right? So that's something which is again driving a lot of the movement from purely owned and operated and consumed asset class to a pay by the drink asset class, or to a asset light or a asset zero asset class kind of a consumption model. So that's something which we were already seeing, already working with, uh, and something which will only going to grow and kind of mutate into different models.
So one buzz around prop tech especially is that it's going to become a $1 trillion market by 2030. What are you guys' opinions? Like, what do you guys believe are the primary factors that are going to make prop tech reach this target? Apart from like tech, because we discussed tech, what are the other factors that you guys think is going to make this target achievable?
Urbanization, we mentioned earlier. I think that is going to be the single biggest, like I said, factor. The asset class it impacts directly is PropTech. This is the largest employer. This is the largest contributor to GDP. So if India wants to will become a 5-6 trillion economy, India cannot become a 5-6 trillion economy without PropTech or becoming probably even bigger than $1 trillion dollar sector. So the opportunity is there. Opportunity is coming. It's a question of when rather than a question of if. how do various ecosystem players use the opportunity, how the regulatory landscape uses the opportunity, participants use the opportunity. Obviously, we'll see over the next 10 years how does that flow. But this, we believe this is one of the single biggest opportunities globally, single biggest large sector opportunities globally to play on the B2C or even B2B consumer ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, see, look, it's roti, kappa, and makan, right? So these are the fundamentals of life. You have seen a lot of apparel businesses really transformed digitally. You have seen a lot of grocery stuff happening. Uh, there is a lot of focus on agri-tech these days, which is again on the food side of it. When it comes to Makan or when it comes to prop tech and all, right? It's definitely the largest, as Samuel said, it's largest employer. So from a demand side, from a requirement side, it's actually not going to be a challenge. I think the basic challenge of how you can get there and what is it really, what will determine whether you are able to get there in the right shape or not. And it's not just going to be determining what happens to the PropTech, whether the PropTech becomes 1 trillion, but PropTech becoming 1 trillion or more, also impacts India becoming 5 trillion, as said, right? It's not that if India becomes 5 trillion, PropTech becomes 1 trillion. If PropTech is able to become 1 trillion or then only India can become 5 trillion. And I think the biggest determinant there, I think I mentioned it earlier also, is the skill level or the availability of the skilled workforce or the semi-skilled workforce, which is going to drive it towards it. You will have businesses like us and ours coming in and trying to leverage the opportunity. You will have businesses which will be transforming manufacturing. You will have businesses which will be transforming transactions or consumption and all. End of the day, it will all boil down to whether we have enough skilled workforce, whether it's blue collar, gray collar, white collar, whether we have enough of the people who are actually able to drive it towards that kind of an economy, right? So that economy will take a lot of the skills, a lot of the experience, a lot of expertise to get there. I think we all probably will finally boil down towards how are you actually able to empower people to get us there.
Cool. So urbanization it is, right? So I think that's it from my few questions that our team handpicked from the audiences that they would like to ask you and Tanuj and Divyanshu. So I'll reading them. So the first question is for Tanuj. Tanuj, what is your long-term vision for Yards? How do you envision lasting impact on the real estate industry and the lives of its consumers?
We continue to speak internally within our colleagues that we haven't scratched the ecosystem. We haven't scratched the opportunity. It's not even day zero for us. I think all we have done is setting up some base camp in preparing for what is ahead. Next 10, 15, 20 years are going to be really, really exciting. We are in for the long haul. We speak when we speak to each other, all the co-founders, senior colleagues. We are very, very clear that what we are trying to do, what this industry is shaping up to, it's not going to happen in the next 1 year or 2 years. We think about 10 years, we think 2 decades, we think these things. We believe not every day one gets an opportunity to play in a $1 trillion sector or a $2 trillion sector in a very, very fragmented space with a particular platform being set. These are the moments which probably define the legacy in the long run. So very, very focused. We genuinely wake up every single day believing there is an opportunity to create a $100 billion ecosystem. How far we get there obviously is a function of our execution over the next few years and decades, like I said. But hopefully we'll stick to it.
Okay, cool. Next question is for both of you. As leaders, how do you foster a culture within your company that aligns with your long-term vision? What strategies or values do you emphasize to entire team is working towards a shared goal?
Divyanshu, you want to go first?
Yep. See, a lot of what you do as a human being is actually picked up when you are in a leadership role, right? So you actually don't have to do a lot different. It's not that you are on the stage and you have to kind of act or perform differently. You just need to be aware that your small uh, frailties of your personality and your small mistakes probably get accentuated more. So all you have to do is be a bit more careful about what you say or how you react or whether you think before you speak and stuff like that. It's all the very, very small, minute things which matter. But end of the day, who you are as a person comes through. You can't fake yourself day in, day out in front of people who you're really spending the most of the time in your life with, right? So you just be genuine. I mean, that's where especially in, my co-founding team, again, my founder Tushar and Akshay and I always talk about being very credible and being very authentic, right? So as long as you're authentic, your authenticity comes through. And if you have built a smart, strong team, right? So you can't really then not your smart. You picked up the wrong people, but if you pick up the right people to work with you, you can't fool them, right? So today you have to be very authentic. You have to be believing what you're doing, and you have to be doing what you're believing in day in, day out, and watch your steps, but also be very cognizant of the fact that what you're saying in town halls is not as important, but what you're doing every single day, every single minute, either when you're sitting in your space alone or when you're interacting with people. And that's where it really comes down. You imprint a lot of yourself into the people that you work with. A lot of people look up to you, especially I think in most of these places in our company also, we have a lot of very young talent who straight from campuses and stuff like that. And these are the people who are really looking up to you as mentors, or and they'll probably put you on a pedestal, and then you have no other option but to really kind of make it worthwhile for their sin to say, okay, I've been working with XYZ and I've learned from them. So it becomes a very big opportunity for you to be authentic, be yourself, but be the best version of yourself what you can be. So it actually improves you as a person as a lot as well.
There is a very old proverb. We take it very seriously. You build people and people build businesses. I think that's very close to our heart in terms of how we build the culture, how we build the system. Effectively, it's humans who build businesses. It doesn't matter what technology you are applying. Eventually, someone has to be there to taking what Divyanshu was mentioning. Someone has to be knowing on a daily basis decisions they are taking, how they're articulating, how they're behaving, what kind of role model they are being set up for the people who follow them. Perseverance, I think I keep on telling all my colleagues that there will be days you won't be motivated, there will be days you won't be as excited to run after the legacy versus other days. What sets you apart is discipline. What sets you apart is that knowing that there will be such days, you go back to the drawing board and you know that next day is going to be different. So discipline, perseverance, sticking to it for a long period of time, for a long haul. I think that makes a difference.
Just to add, sorry, to add one thing to tell me what you said. See, it's not what you are doing on your good days which defines you, right? It's what you're doing on your bad days which really defines you more as a person. And that goes for us as well as for the team that we work with.
Agree.
Good. So the next question is for Square Yards. Tanuj, expansion has been a significant aspect of Square Yards growth. Any specific regions or markets that you have your sights on for future expansion? How do you plan to approach these new markets?
I think we have as a system. If you would ask me this question 4 years back, I would have given a very different answer. We wanted to conquer the world. We still want to conquer the world at some point in time. But I think what we have learned over the last few years is to pick our battles to fight. In the short term, we have become much more focused. We have much more sharper laser trajectory in terms of where we want to be, what we want to achieve. We want to win those markets first before we move to the other markets. Creating that full stack ecosystem. We believe we are pretty much in all the categories we wanted to be. In the last 12 to 18 months, we have said no to so many opportunities. A 5-year-old Square Yards would have said yes to. And now it's more of the same, ensuring that over the next 3 to 4 years, we increase our market and the mind share, move to the double digits, win these
The Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India has announced that the three-pronged approach focusing on availability, accessibility, and affordability is underworks with the aim to ensure insurance for all by 2047. Such is the gravity of ensuring that every household is ensured in circumstances. A pioneer in the field, Ankit Agarwal, founder and CEO of Insurance Deco, is the best to catch in conversation from the sector.
With a passion to serve the community, he aspires to reach the masses with low-cost services through Insurance Deco. Launched in 2016, this online platform that allows users to compare policies and pick the best suited for them with just a few clicks caters to over 14 lakh customers today.
Introducing our moderator for the session, Saudi, business head at the Telegraph, a result-driven executive with extensive exposure and experience in all phases of business development industries. He brings over 19 years of experience in the consumer banking domain. Over to you, Sajid.
Thanks, guys. Hope Ankit and loud and clear to me.
Yes, Samar, I can hear you.
Yeah,
Good to have everybody.
welcome to this chat, and it's really great to host you today. And as the beginning of it said that there are a lot of expectations which are building in the insurance space, especially the regulators coming in with a lot of good announcements and a lot of opportunities in terms of people to build businesses. I would like to know about your journey and how you see insurance Deco and how do people even think of buying and selling insurance.
Thanks. Firstly, thanks, Samar. Thanks, everybody from Bits for inviting me on a Friday afternoon. I'm sure lots more exciting things to talk about, know and hear about insurance. Between me and Samar, we'll try to make this session as engaging and as interactive as possible. Samar, my roots are in a small village in Bihar. There's a small village called Choti Baria. A lot of people confuse it with Chandrasekhar Baria in UP, right? So I keep telling people I'm from Israel, which is the most famous place close to my village. But dad was the first CA in his village. उसके बाद आफ्टर पापा का CA हो गया तो पापा ने जॉब करना स्टार्ट किया था. वो born in Assam, but they finally settled in Calcutta. A typical Calcutta profile. ग्रेजुएशन कर लो, ग्रेजुएशन के साथ देख लो CA कर सकते हो तो कर लो, BCom और CA कर सकते हो तो CA कर लो, और फिर उसके बाद आप देखो कॉर्पोरेट फाइनेंस में क्या जॉब कर सकते हो. The only place was after my graduation and CA I decided to do my master in finance and control. Then I worked with UBS. 2012 is when I came back to India, and the reason I thought about starting insurance is जब इंडिया में फादर साहब की तबीयत बहुत खराब, ऑलमोस्ट 10-12 दिन हॉस्पिटल में थे. बट जब डिस्चार्ज पे तो कैसे इंश्योरेंस बोला इंश्योरेंस तो सब कुछ कवर्ड होगा. बट जब हम नीचे कैश काउंटर पे गए डिस्चार्ज स्लिप लेने के लिए तो उन्होंने बोला आपको एक्स अमाउंट देना पड़ेगा, है ना. एंड वो अमाउंट बहुत ही बड़ा था मतलब फॉर दैट टाइम. इवन दो वी रनिंग उनको लगा इतने पैसे. हमने इंश्योरेंस में पूछा तो उन्होंने बोला कि 4 चीज़ें कवर्ड नहीं है. जो हमारे एजेंट आते थे उनको फ़ोन किया, 10 साल से हमसे बीमा करवा रहे थे, तो उनको फ़ोन था, उन्होंने बोला আমি জানতাম না এইসব ইনক্লুডেড আছে, আমি জানতাম না. লাইক अरे आप 10 साल से पैसा ले रहे हो और आपको मालूम नहीं है कि इंक्लूडेड नहीं. बट दैट्स वी केम बैक होम एंड दैट्स व्हेन इट गॉट मी थिंकिंग कि वी वुड बी इन द टॉप 1% ऑफ दिस कंट्री, राइट, फ्रॉम एजुकेशन पर्सपेक्टिव, अर्निंग पर्सपेक्टिव एटसेट्रा. और अगर हमारे साथ ये होता है तो किसी के साथ भी हो सकता है ना. तो फिर सोचना स्टार्ट किया कि इंश्योरेंस में कुछ करते हैं. बट लाइक ऑल मिडिल क्लास फैमिलीज, रोटी कपड़ा मकान का फाइट हमेशा रहता है आपके दिमाग में. तो रोटी कपड़ा मकान का फाइट था. एंड देन आई जॉइंड अनदर स्टार्टअप कॉल्ड मूविंग ऑन हाइट. आई थिंक दैट वाज अ गुड डिसीजन बिकॉज़ आई लर्न हाउ टू बिल्ड अ कंपनी 0 to 1 to 10. बट 2015 के आसपास वापस से दिमाग में आने लग गया था कि कैन आई स्टार्ट समथिंग insurance. And that's when I met the group founders Amit and Anurag, like what they were doing joined them. पहले बारे में कुछ और कर रहा था within the group, and then 2016 is when we applied for a booking license. I started building out insurance. Over the last 6-7 years, that's what we've been focused on. And the idea is that you take insurance distribution to the masses. And beyond the top 100 million internet users in the country, how can you take insurance distribution to a Begusarai? How can you take it to a Malda? Or how can you take it to a Kota? How can you take it to a Bhor? This is what our core focus is.
So when you said that in 2016 you decided to take a distribution license, this is the same time when the distribution licenses, the distribution companies have been allowed by insurance companies, or they were already there?
They were already there, Sajid. They were already there. I think tech नहीं था उस समय. Policy Bazaar was the only tech-enabled player. फिर a bunch of us started getting into that space.
So how did you score the market? Because see, as we all know, whenever you build a business, understanding the space is very important. Because otherwise there's so much to do that it's very easy to get lost. Especially with technological data का चक्कर में that becomes a work in itself. So tell us very broadly that how do you score the market, because that's very important to be honest to in any business, and where you are definitely focused well. And the story that you said is the middle on the. So I would like to know a little bit more on that.
So Samad, this is for all the young folks who joined us, right? As Farhan and Abhi were telling us, there are going to be a lot of students. Some of them I hope will become entrepreneurs in due course. जब भी आपको कोई धंधा स्टार्ट करना हो तो उस धंधे की स्कोपिंग एक एसी कमरे में एक्सेल शीट में मत करना. अगर किसी भी धंधे को समझना है आपको कि धंधा कितना बड़ा बन सकता है, उसकी क्या ज़रूरतें हैं और उस ज़रूरतों को आप कैसे पूरा करोगे, प्लीज मेक श्योर दैट यू नो व्हाट आर द मीट पीपल. When we were starting on this business, there were about 7 of us in my initial team, 8 of us in my initial team. Between the 7 to 8 of us, we would have met upwards of 1,000 people spread across Haryana, Rajasthan, Punjab, because वो नॉर्थ में थे, हमारे बहुत ईजी था यहाँ पे जाके लोकेशन मिला. हमने ये समझने की कोशिश की कि एक एजेंट को तकलीफ क्या होती है, एक कस्टमर को तकलीफ क्या होती है, वो क्या पेन पॉइंट्स है, राइट, एंड हाउ वी सॉल्व फॉर दोस पेन पॉइंट्स. और फिर हमने रियलाइज किया कि अगर आपको इंडिया में इंश्योरेंस या बीमा का पेनिट्रेशन बढ़ाना है तो आपको एक फिजिकल टच पॉइंट बेस्ड कंपनी खोलनी पड़ेगी. यू कांट डू इट ऑनलाइन, डॉट कंपनी साथ नहीं खोल पाओगे. यू विल हैव टू सॉल्व फॉर इट बाय गोइंग टू द ग्राउंड, टू द मासेस एंड वर्किंग विद पीपल. सो वी विल बी एजेंट फोकस्ड कंपनी, राइट. जब हमें बोला कि हम एजेंट फोकस्ड कंपनी बनेंगे तो हमारे एजेंट कौन होते थे, शर्मा अंकल, वर्मा आंटी, उनको हमको हेल्प करना पड़े. फिर हम उनके साथ बैठे थे, बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग चीज होती है ना. कोई भी एजेंट आपके घर आता था उस समय बीमा बेचने के लिए, तो एक बैग लेके आता था, ठीक है. उस बैग में इंश्योरेंस को कैलकुलेटर होता था, उसमें कवर नोट बुक होता था, रिसीट बुक होता था, स्टैम्प्स होते थे. हमने बोला अगर हम इसके बैग को रिप्लेस कर सकते हैं, राइट, तो हम एकदम सेट हो जाएंगे, हमसे बड़ी कंपनी को नहीं बनना चाहते. तो वी एक्चुअली सैट डाउन विद एजेंट्स, वी मैप आउट कि उसके बैग में क्या क्या होता है या उसको क्या क्या चीजें करनी पड़ती है. फिर हमने बोला एक स्टेप को हम डिजिटाइज कैसे कर सकते हैं. एंड एज वी स्टार्टेड डिजिटाइजिंग, वी स्टार्टेड ऑनबोर्डिंग मोर पीपल हु न्यू मोर अबाउट इंश्योरेंस एंड दे स्टार्टेड joining us.
So what you said is like takeaway from this for people listening and build a business or who are already doing business. I think you said that you started in a sort of concentrate sector. You were in north, you focused on the north market first, and then slowly reached out. So you played your strength and then you will spread yourself thin. कहीं अपना दायरे से बाहर नहीं गया, धीरे धीरे. Exactly. Second, but the industry is बोले हुए physical and physical world and digital का एक चीज which I personally feel very strongly because this generation, like people even between me and you, we are more physical than
things that might work out. So let's probably take a step back and let's go back to 2013, 2012 when you mentioned you were helping some of clients or friends with sales and marketing automations and maybe helping them with their international sales as well. Talking Lead Squared software or the product, like what was the first version of the product? What exactly Lead software or product were doing at that time? And how it has evolved over the period of time and what it is capable to do today, if you can, walk us through that journey.
So initially it was more suitable for, a small marketing team use case and a smaller team rather, like, maybe a small marketing team doing some kind of marketing, outreach and, engaging the prospects. It was tailored for that. And for smaller, let's just say qualification teams, who would qualify the inquiries which come in or chase, chase leads which are interested in the communication. Basically, that was the initial, prospect base. And over time, we figured that the process of getting to a point of inquiry and closing the inquiry is the area where most of the money was being spent, and that's where the ask of the businesses were. I think it also was another situation was that the marketing user which we were serving, especially in smaller teams, there was a likelihood, not likelihood, it happened. It was happening that if you serve a marketer and if they, let's say, switch their roles, let's say move from a company A to company B, then there is no one to defend the purchase, and then the customer may decide not to continue, right? So that basically would, lead, into a customer churn, and then basically you have to start all over again. And so there was less stickiness, let's just say, in what we built. I'm not saying the space won't offer stickiness particularly. It was the offering we had at that time was not as sticky given what I just described. And over time, we found that, given our software in hands of salespeople, it'll be more sticky and basically the value to business will be more. And that's where we started moving in that direction. Over a few years, we switched in the sales side. We continue to offer our marketing product, and it has many customers and continues to add customers as well. But our larger user base is today in the sales side, basically, people who are actually selling. So that was the transition, if you ask me, in the process we had, from where we started.
Got it. And over the period of, these entire learnings and pivoting of the product, can you even call out, I would say, you moments or maybe a PMF moment where you thought कि नहीं यार ये लग रहा है कि ये चल जाए, or something like नहीं, this is something probably hundreds of thousands of customers would buy from us, help you grow as a business. So if you can point out a couple of those moments where you, if we did that, we saw this, and then we thought ki this will probably work out now.
There'll be, so one was, I had an inkling, or rather, I believed, I won't say inkling, that would be not absolutely correct. I believed that the market we are in is fairly large. A lot of people disagreed, but I think their disagreement was more to do with saying, because there are incumbents in the market, so why would you be able to build another software which caters to that need? So I think that was fundamentally, I believed and continue to believe that it's a large market. And B, over time, I would not say in the beginning it was coming out to be true. Over time, as we built the business from 13, 14, 15, 16 onwards, it was becoming clearer that the India market will also be a larger market for software purchases, especially in the categories which we are in. And so that, it was less of a product moment, but more of a saying that the market is large and substantial. And if you have the right offering for the market, you will be able to build a sizable business. So that clarity emerged, with some time. Then I think if you look at, the other thing which I would say was happening in that time period is that, since, as I mentioned about digital companies, right? Digital companies were coming in, the spend on online was increasing. So there were two kinds of spend, rather we can just maybe broadly classify. One is to just let people know companies were doing e-commerce spend, basically somebody spending money to get a customer or make a purchase. And then the rest of the dollars going generating an inquiry or a lead for a other companies, all kinds of companies. So high degree of ownership exists in people. It doesn't matter. I mean, they could be less experienced or more. So we had all varieties, I would say.
Absolutely. Just before we go into a bit of a SaaS or a business kind of a question, just one last question on the product bit, right? I mean, if we take a lead squared as the product, and let's probably take an example of any large business, maybe any banking business or an insurance business. Before lead squared and after lead squared, what typically changes for, let's say, chief sales officer or maybe a chief marketing officer, right? In terms of the time and the effort cost saved, in terms of also the visibility, in terms of the funnels of the entire sales also, like what change lead squared, provides to the people, like CSOs or chief marketing officers.
Good question. So before and after, depending on where the customer is coming from, right? So let's just take an example. So if somebody is coming from their custom built solutions, as an example, right? Usually it is hard for them to make any changes to their own systems. In which case, if there is a new, anything which new comes in, any process change, etc., becomes extremely hard for those businesses, which reduces their time to market for whatever things they're trying to achieve. So I think first is ability to get things done which were not being possible earlier. Second is the velocity at which things happen, right? So that's the second important thing, which means if they were able to move things at X speed with lead square, it'll be X by 5, X by 10, depending on the size and type of the business. And so these are two points. They were unable to do few things with that. They're able to automate and move things faster. Either the sales process or any kind of onboarding process or some kind of marketing process. The third thing is, our software allows customers to basically identify and help them focus on types of leads or types of opportunities which are likely to purchase, and that gives you drive efficiencies in terms of close rates and in terms of doing things faster. I mean, you can focus your energy and efficiency in areas which will deliver more results. So those things also help so fundamentally it's driving sales efficiencies, either closing more business, focusing on right inquiries, getting things done which were not possible earlier. And by doing so, all of this, you can fundamentally see where the pockets of inefficiencies are. You can monitor the funnel. You can look at performance across the board, for a variety of products you're selling, for different regions in which sales are happening, phone sales versus offline sales, or a combination. Like you can have the full visibility, direct versus indirect sales, partner sales. All of that can be done.
Got it. One question on specifically scaling the software business in India. Like from the few of my friends that I have, and also in general, keep hearing across the ecosystem that a SaaS or a software for India, then you have to basically build a service company, because each large enterprise customer in India that you target and tap into have a specific set of requirements, specific set of software system that they themselves built or previous system that they're using. So, what are your learnings on scaling the leads, probably bit scaling across India, across industries? What worked? What did not work? What are your learnings?
I think Indian customers are more demanding. There is no denying on that. But I think it's also, so you have to serve them. You're right. Service is an important component, which is why it is harder to serve businesses in India. But I would not 100% agree that while doing so, you have to be a services company fully. you'll need a product. If a product is not there, then as you described, you'll have to become a services company by making those accommodating those requests if you have to. So I think it's a question of kind of customers you're choosing to go after versus trying to also, and plus the problems you're solving, right? So there is a balance there. I mean, you can strike that balance. I mean, you can ask the same question and say if the foreign companies are coming and selling in India, they are also doing services, or their partners are doing services, but they eventually have a product which they are selling to the customer, right? And so it is not fair to say that you have to become a services company because the Indian customers are like that, because Indian customers are buying software from all kinds of people, Adobe, Salesforce, Microsoft, whatnot, right? So you need to have the right product as well to avoid that situation. And also a lot of Indian companies are doing it. I mean there's a ton of them now, who are having a product and serving the customer. In some markets, it is possible that you have to do services more, and those could be because of either the market sizes are small and you just have to do the whole thing, or the products are fairly complex and you just can't do without serving, because in a young company, your partners will not come and do services for you, etc. So I think those could be the cases, but I would think from that angle versus being a broad statement. So customers will pay for product as well, and they are paying, and progressively they are paying more. So that opportunity is just expanding for software companies here.
Got it. Another process that companies, while scaling, they face the challenge that they have a drop in sales efficiency, or maybe high customer acquisition costs or something. So any of these, is something that you have faced, or any of these that we did by doing this, something that you managed to do at Lead Squared?
No, you're right. I think sales efficiency, inefficiencies creep in all kinds of companies, and it is not, let's just say, it's not straightforward to, avoid them, and there are ways to circumvent that. I think capital hides the inefficiencies to some degree. So if lack of capital is there, people get efficient faster, and so the way to avoid inefficiencies are fundamentally, you just have to keep working on it, right? I mean, training, so sales training, especially in customer acquisition, training becomes an important part. If you can have standardized that, it helps people, hit their quotas quickly. The better the description of the product and the solution and the problem understanding, the easier it will be to put the point across. And you can, so those things also help in defining and refining the segments to go after and the pitches to make. If it is more general, and then it'll be difficult. It gets more expensive. The CAC goes up. And finally, choosing the right customer, right? So even if you sell to a smaller customer and the cost of sale is very high, then also you'll have trouble because of because the cost won't be recovered in the sales process. So I think the combination of that is there, and the closer you look at the data and the metrics, it will be more obvious where to focus on. The hard part is just getting it done, like getting it executed. It's where the energies go a lot. So sometimes it is, businesses and leaders and managers already know the problem. It's just there is so much going on in what they're trying to achieve, is that some of this just is not attended as much, and that's why the inefficiencies sometimes last longer than they should. But we have seen all of this in our business, and solved some faster. You solve one area and then again it happens in another area. I mean, it's a process, so you just keep doing it, basically.
Got it. Got it. Thanks. On the back, you mentioned that, like international expansion, US and other countries have already started for Lead Squared. What are the challenges, or not challenges per se, what are the differences in terms of, acquiring customers or onboarding them? You think that exists for the US clients versus, that probably do not exist for the Indian clients? Like the pricing, pricing was one of the factors probably for Western side of countries. Or is it the approach of selling, or is it just, type of features that Indian, enterprise customers was versus US customers? Like what are the differences?
I think the markets are different, so that certainly is true. Which means that their ask will be different, slightly different in some cases, widely different in other cases. And approaching them also is especially in US versus India, is different, right? So I think differences exist. Fundamentally, so that anybody who has not done sales in US will go through that phase of learning sales or marketing, all the product. All areas will have to learn before you can do something meaningful in that market. So I think there is no escape from that, because there are distinctions in each areas. The important thing is the problem at hand, which you're trying to solve. There are commonalities in the two markets. And so if the product actually has commonality, then you'll have one less variable to solve for. And it'll be more, understanding the market and approach to the customer and refining the story for them is what, and how do you sort of build the go-to-market there would be different. And so there are differences. As simple as, when you hire a salesperson here versus there, how do you expect that to happen? And how do you expect that to happen in India? These two is a good starting point. Salespeople in America may not necessarily like a lot of ambiguity. They would like to be more clear what the value proposition is, who to go after, what to say, how to present the order, and how to close the order. Like they're more used to, let's just say, defined steps. And when you're trying to approach that market and you yourself are not clear then of these steps, then it's harder to to execute, and you might just hire incorrectly. So there are a lot of variables. You may have hired a wrong person for the job, for the role. You yourself are not fully clear about what you're trying to go after and what's the value proposition is, and this new variable doesn't help. And so there are learnings in that where as there's a lot of encouragement of entrepreneurs trying to go to US and do the sales themselves, learn first, and then replicate that with the new member. And so there are different different areas of of where one can go wrong, but this is one area from an execution standpoint where people have made mistakes, and I have made mistakes as well, where we have learned and kind of made some changes. With respect to expectations of the customer, also is slightly different. Customers in some cases may not be forgiving. In most cases, I would say, not some cases. In the US market, if you have signed for something, if they've signed for something, they need that. Maybe an Indian customer sometimes may give you a little bit of a leeway to say, I'll go and fix it later, etc. But in US, you would not get that opportunity unless you have made it clear to them upfront, right? So I think those are differences as well which exist in how customers, what are their expectations from what you offer. So there is a lot of clarity you need to establish there, and what you're selling, what you're offering versus. So those are learnings, right? And the product quality, of course, play a role. But the good news is, if you have the right offering, if people like it, they're happy to give you a reference and talk about your product. Come with you on a webinar, and all of those are easier things to do in that market.
Got it. Thanks. That's useful. Just one last question from my side before we jump into a couple of audience questions. Is that specifically, since since last couple of years, AI has so many companies are coming up with new set of AI products or new set of changes for the users to do entire AI based. So specifically for SaaS industry, how do you see the change happening in both the sides in terms of product development of SaaS for the consumers and also in terms of sales, right? I mean, because might be the enterprise that might needed a SaaS tool for very small as a small customer of that SaaS company might not require them because they feel that they can now build it themselves in-house and internal. So all of those questions have now emerged over a period of last 2 quarters. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think AI will not will. It's already making difference and changes to how people operate and will operate, and everybody has to just embrace it, including SaaS companies. I think the multiple ways to look at it. One is to drive efficiencies in how you operate and do things. So the way things got done earlier will need to change with this new approach, which means people and teams who are adopting this will get more efficient than the ones who are not. And so that's imperative on companies and people, irrespective of which segment they are in. Particularly for SaaS and software companies, it should be an important thing to do. And with respect to your question on whether enterprises will build their own, I think that'll happen too in some cases, and it's just that what they are signing up for. So if you see software business, development of software is just one part of the story. Maintaining, running the systems, always updating here and there. And enterprises have needs, business change, they introduce new products. Something changes, right? So just getting to the changes is not easy. That's why they outsource it. That's why they, it's not like a bank, army of 1,000 developers doing product. They will work with some SI, some system integrator companies to build it for them, right? So for them, the question should be, should I, an Infosys to build it for me, or it'll be seldom that they will say, I'll hire 50 developers to do it myself. Like, I don't think that they're going that route necessarily. And some certainly will go. It all depends on what are the choices they are making for their business. So, I think while there is one has to be mindful that people may take a route to build something on their own, but it's just that, there's always this challenge, right? If you are a small company, you build software for yourself. If the developer leaves, then what? Who is going to make the change? Right? I mean, it's the same question, right? And so I think it is contextual. Some people will do it, most won't, my view.
Almost towards the last couple of questions we'll pick from the audience. One, I think, interesting question that's being asked by Brahmansh is that as a SaaS company who is handling two kinds of data, one is your enterprise data for the end customer that you're handling, and also the end customer data who are the enterprise. How do you go about managing the data, A? And B, how do you also go about making sure that data security and compliance with the proper relevant regulations are also enterprise?
Yeah, these are important things. We have teams specifically tasked on these matters. So whether it's RBI regulation as an example, or IRDA regulation, is it SEBI regulation? These are non-negotiable ideas, non-negotiable. So we have made investments in that area, both our engineering and product. And these are all things you have to just take care. There is not escape from it. It's just the way you do business there. So these are just baked into how we build and maintain software. So there is no, and also we keep a close eye on what's coming in, what changes are happening, adopt to those requirements from our customers. So it is, it's like a checklist. It's like an item. You just have to do it. Like it's not like an optionality there, basically.
Got it. And probably just one last of the session. is that being in SaaS, again, from the sort of background, how do you balance being accommodating the customer customization request, the feature request, so getting the scale?
It's always a balance, as you yourself pointed out. I mean, there are times you do things for a customer or for a group of customers, and then those may not be necessarily relevant for other customers. And there are some mistakes which you make in that process. But in general, if you are looking at the requests coming in and they are coming in from a customer with a valid needs, you're able to find a balance in getting that done. And also it is a question of what brings money today versus tomorrow, right? And those are choices, product teams have to make. And I think so. There is no like rule of thumb, but as you would know, you're running product folks org structure organization yourself. I think fundamentally the question is going to be the insignificant ask versus business critical ask, right? So the ask is to really find out what somebody is asking, whether it impacts their revenue in our case, or removes a significant hurdle for them in their business. If that is not established, there is no point in just taking a request and doing it, right? I mean, if it doesn't make a huge difference to the customer's business, then no point in doing it, or rather deprioritize that versus other things. So it's a question, it's a business question, literally. It's not a product question only.
Got it. I think it was a great session specifically and around learning, and also your learnings over a period of last. Though it was just a 1 hour of time, but I think you summed up some of the key learnings pretty well. Over to folks from the Conquest and Bits team now.
Thank you. Bye.
I'm sure this conversation catered to our audience curiosity about the exponential rise in the SaaS sector in the best possible way. Thank you, Nilesh and Abhay, for giving us first-hand insights from the industry. Thanks a lot for taking time to doing this session.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate. Thank you, audience, for being patient.
just as a warning.
Our next session is the best place to gain insight into how e-commerce and logistics synergize as we bring together leaders of the top companies in both of these domains. Presenting a fireside chat between Vishesh Khurana of Shiprocket and Amrinder Dhaliwal of IndiaMart.
Vishesh Khurana, the co-founder and growth head of Shiprocket, which launched in 2017 with a mission to create a seamless logistics data platform that connects retailers, carriers, and consumers across national and international locations. Today, Shiprocket is a platform behind 2.5 lakh plus sellers who generate a gross merchandise value of more than $2.5 billion annually.
Amrinder Dhaliwal is the Chief Product Officer at IndiaMart, India's largest online B2B marketplace connecting buyers and suppliers. Founded in 1999, it offers a platform and tools to over 12.5 crore buyers to search from over 7.2 crore products and connect with reliable and competitive suppliers.
Introducing our moderator for the session, Samajit Chowdhury, business head at The Telegraph. A result-driven executive with extensive exposure and experience in all phases of business development across industries, he brings over 19 years of experience in the domain. Over to you, Samajit.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Welcome, Amarinder, and welcome, Vishesh, on this Sunday afternoon. Let's keep it as lively as possible for our viewers to listen and gain some insight. And as I've been told that most of the listeners or the audience are students who are already into some sort of thinking of starting a startup or to the startup phase, or might have passed out and trying something. So let's address it accordingly. So over to Amrinder. Amrinder, if you can just briefly tell us about IndiaMart a bit. I'm sure people are aware, but still to put a context to our discussion, it would be nice that what IndiaMart does. We know it's one of the largest B2B platforms, and still just to give a perspective.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting the session, Samar. A very quick introduction of IndiaMart. We are a matchmaking platform that connects buyers and suppliers across thousands of products. So I can say that any product that is not available online in India, perhaps then it's not available on IndiaMart. So if anything's gone online, be it buttons for a shirt, to the fabric, to the machinery that makes it, to electrical vehicles, to the batteries that are used, to the raw material that is used in the electrical vehicle. So very diverse set of products across pharmaceuticals, across chemicals, across industrial plant and machinery, to very retail kind of products that we think about. Every product and spread across every nook and corner of the country. That's what really we serve.
Thanks, Amrinder. Vishesh, if you can take us to Shiprocket. I know that you're one of the upcoming organizations in the logistics space. If you can give us some insights to put things into perspective.
Sure. So a very quick and short definition of what...
I can't hear you. Can you come closer to the mic?
Is it better?
Yeah, better.
Yeah, so I'm saying Shiprocket is how we ourselves as a supply chain operating system. Anything that happens to an order post checkout is something that we take over. So once the order is received into a platform, be it any shopping cart or a marketplace, what should happen post that, from where it should be picked up. So we do warehousing, from who it should be picked up by, which carrier to be allocated to, and the whole communication, the WhatsApp communication, the tracking pages, the customer relationship on that journey of delivery is something that we help our sellers manage through the platform.
So is IndiaMart your client?
Sorry?
IndiaMart your client?
I hope so.
Okay. So coming back to our discussion, the big elephant in the room is ONDC. A lot of people are talking about it. So in light of the ONDC project, reshaping India's digital commerce, how do you see it impacting your industry? Like, Vishesh, the question is first to you. B2B e-commerce, or say the sense B2B e-commerce, I'll go to Neerav for his input. But what Shiprocket sees and how can ONDC impact it? If you can give us an insight.
Yeah, I think we have been lucky to get access to ONDC from the idea stage itself. So we've been working with the team there on a lot of these areas. I think the vision of ONDC and what we were trying to do is pretty much similar. So when we call it, it's all about democratization, right? It's giving access to more people than removing the barriers to entry and all those things. So I kind of aligned there with ONDC, and I personally think it's a great move. It's unsurprisingly happening way faster than anyone would have expected, and it's also been executed well, which everyone had a doubt about that. Is it just an idea or the execution will happen? So far, I think whatever we are seeing being part of it and working with the team there, I think it's also executed well. And on the idea stage is definitely going to change a lot on how things are done. I think the margin profile, the whole play around what price should the product be sold online will kind of get changed for good with the whole move.
What do you think about logistics? This is for your company, or logistics as a thing will get redefined with the ONDC further? How do you see that space?
Logistics, I think, is already been redefined, but with ONDC, a lot will change in terms of access. So today, before Shiprocket entered, I think smaller sellers with very low order a month always had a challenge to get access to the services, because if you don't have volumes, you will never price and all those things. With ONDC, I think the access will now be available to a lot of people. That definition, you can get access to a lot more partners that may not be online yet. So a lot of carriers now are going online, adding their technology layers to their systems to be part of ONDC. So it will change. It will just, I think, a lot more players will be there in the market with ONDC's availability.
So Amrinder, how do you think ONDC will impact your B2B e-commerce space?
I think if we look at ONDC and the vision of ONDC, then it's very clear that of the 150, 160 million users who actually transact online today, there are only about 10, 15 million who are power users, so to say. And there is another 300, 400 million users who consumed digital content online but never really transacted for various issues, various reasons. So the vision is around bringing those users online and bringing both the networks, the buyer networks and the supplier networks. So in our view, the first area where ONDC and the network will contribute is in the digital services and goods. So for example, ticketing, for example, mobility, because there the access is available, trust issues are less, and it's about enablement by the entire ecosystem. And moving that forward into converting into transactions in hyperlocal and local areas like in groceries or in pharma, and the various obvious ones like electronics and mobiles and fashion. So these very B2C commerce, retail, even B2B, the retail side of it is the first one that is likely to go online and through this network, because the biggest gap that exists in these products is they are fairly standard, they are available, but small merchants don't have access to digital capabilities, and buyers do not have any platform where they can have integrated product and supply and logistics all combined together. So that enablement is what ONDC is going to do. When it comes to very specific B2B, also B2B is a very, very large domain. So if you go outside, the grocery itself is very large. So the entire supply chain of groceries and the D2C brand itself, and the entire value chain of manufacturers to wholesalers to distributors across various industries. So the first one will be the ones which are closest to consumer, which are more hyper-local. And the larger categories, which the vision document also talks about, is agriculture and construction, which are highly unorganized. And then you go beyond that, there is this whole world of plant and machinery, of chemicals, pharmaceuticals that exists, which will take its own time. So I think right now for us, it's important that the platform takes off for these highly consumed categories and the potential consumed categories. And maybe in another 3 to 4 years' time, it will be ready, the platform will be ready for more niche, more long-tail B2B categories apart from the grocery and the pharmaceuticals.
So basically say that with the ONDC taking the standardization and will help people and the user experience will be much better. Right? So that probably means more transactions coming in and much faster.
I think there are two aspects to it. So one is if you look at the user experience, then the large platforms that have come in, they do bring in a great shift in the experience. And in logistics, for example, Shiprocket, and they've done great work to really simplify logistics and make it accessible to smaller D2C brands. It's about how do you democratize it further, and how do you reduce the cost of transaction, and how do you bring enablement for smaller businesses who may not get any opportunity because they didn't have the scale, they didn't have the access to the market, So the long vision of ONDC is to, on the buyer side, give access to this entire supplier range, which was not available, and do an omni-channel kind of discovery. And on the supplier side, it is to bring all those products and services which the large platforms do tend to ignore because they are maybe too niche. And those suppliers, if you want to sell, for example, on any of the large B2C platforms like Amazon, Flipkart, you got to give maybe 40 to 60% of your margin away, even to sell one product over there. So can it be made more competitive? Can the transaction cost be reduced? Can enablement be done for small brands? Can the discovery be enabled? So that's what really is going to get solved. And this is what will bring the 500 million additional users that we're talking about, which are there, but today, because of various issues of supply and demand, are not getting serviced. So their experience will improve, and the width and the depth of products and services available, the supplier networks available, and the hyper-local network going online. Those are the kind of big shifts that are likely to happen with ONDC.
So this is, I track this, but unfortunately, e-commerce is not my area of expertise. But I wanted to check with you, when do you think is the ONDC going to likely go live? Like, is there a date to it?
No, I think it's already live in pilot stages. For example, Bangalore is already live with selected categories and selected pin codes. So the expansion will be, I think, stage-wise, city by city. But it's already live. I think we are in pilot. Yeah. A couple of $1,000 already. It's there. It's alive.
Summer it's in pilot stage in 5 cities. So that's the rollout that's happening.
So let's start moving to the next piece. See, both IndiaMart and Shiprocket seems that the MSME sector is in big way in the center of a lot of things that you do. So if Rashesh can say that how has the MSME landscape changed and how the MSME fits into your strategic initiatives of growth for Shiprocket?
I think the base was already there. We have to look the world at two sides, pre and post-COVID. I think post-COVID, the awareness. Pre-COVID, I think online as a channel was just an alternative channel which was optional, which is not the case anymore. So MSME today are way more aware. Everyone considers online as one of the more primary channels. It's also not looked up as a backup channel, it's also looked up as a growth channel. So the behavior change has helped. It's changed a lot post-COVID with that one initiative. Overall, I think the base is also growing phenomenally well. We did not expect to have as many as we have today as active customers on the platform. So the base is definitely growing.
So you focus a lot on most of your this, I was talking about small traders and stuff, they will be only innocent, right?
Yes.
Post-COVID, most of them, like, my experience has been that now with the UPI, most of the stores and shops have started taking UPI. Like even the kirana stores तो बहुत बड़े हो गए, like कपड़े वाले जो चाय और सिगरेट देते हैं वो भी आजकल UPI से पेमेंट करने लगते हैं. So which is a great thing, and I hope you guys are also seeing a lot of traction around that. Right?
Yes, I think we're seeing the same thing.
And what about you on this, Amrinder, like the MSME piece? Because your being a B2B thing, I think your play with MSME is much bigger, right? A lot of those MSME people listed on your website would be from MSME. Right?
Absolutely, and we are the backbone of SME business, if I can say so. Is we like more like how telecom is and how power is. If there is no power, no electricity, probably things will come to a grinding halt. So we feel that we contribute to this whole machinery of SMEs doing business digitally. In our journey, we started on domestic buyers to domestic suppliers focus in 2008. Prior to that, our focus was around exporters serving buyers outside India. And since then, India has gradually moved towards strengthening its base, though we are still very small compared to China in manufacturing. And largely, we are a services-based industry, but MSME contribute a very significant portion of what happens in our economy and our GDP. So since 2008, we've been focused on bringing these businesses online. So first thing to bring them online is to actually catalog them. How do you get their content? I mean, if you're sitting in, for example, if you're from Delhi or sitting in Chavi Bazaar, the kind of merchandise that sits out there is mind-boggling when you go there physically. So when you have to digitize all that, so we have a large sales force that goes on ground and works with these SMEs to digitize content. So we've been doing that since 2008.
So you guys basically go to market and digitize it. It's not a click and or fancy and for the photos and stuff.
So ideally, we would like to do that, but it's hard. You can imagine SME is not an established corporate.
Quality, size, resolution.
Also, if you just leave that aside, because you may not look like how Myntra looks like, but if it is a machinery and it is the photograph is there, the work will get done. If there's a gear, then the picture is there, and it is in a warehouse, the work would get done. But it's what the SME has to deal with. So many offline business to look at, so many day-to-day aspects to look at, and then digital is it's not an easy medium to learn. It's not that today I go online and start getting business. So even if we bring them online, we need them to invest a resource and look at digital leads. We need SMEs in own time and effort. So it takes about 6 months to really learn how to follow up on those leads, how to close the leads, and then in the meanwhile they need to manage their offline business as well. So it's bringing this set of SMEs, enabling them, helping them with digitizing content, and gradually bringing in some kind of faith, and it's also word of mouth as somebody in Jabri Bazaar starts setting business online. The word spreads that yes, today we may contribute 10%, tomorrow we may contribute 50% of that business's volume, and other people, word of mouth, digitally and otherwise, start getting some success, and they also start coming online. So today we are the largest platform for onboarding SMEs. More than 75 million catalogs products are listed on a platform, and 70 lakh suppliers, 70 lakh plus suppliers are there. So these are all assisted to a large extent. A lot of them post-COVID, as we were talking about, that there's a shift that has happened post-COVID. Where suppliers now say, okay, it's not about should I go online, it's about okay, how do I go online and what do I do? So many of them now themselves come online and they start creating the catalogs, they start onboarding the products, but it's still a very large assisted process that is there. And in the journey, not only COVID, but a few other initiatives that the government has taken. You just spoke about, but even GST, the one big change in SME's life. So the businesses which are 40 lakh plus annually, they're also significantly large in scale, and that has really helped us to bring quality suppliers on board. So we work on verification of these suppliers and making sure that these large supplier bases were already registered with GST. They start doing business online. They start getting access to markets, which probably they did not have, and it was limited only to doing business physically. So it opened up not only buyer bases, but also it acts as a raw material sourcing base. So 37% of the suppliers were listed on a platform. They are also buyers. It's very, very unique to our platform. So imagine that enablement of SMEs is not only in access to the market, but also reducing the cost of business, also enabling them to get raw materials, the machinery, the components, the consumables at a better price, a better quality. And that's really what we've been building all these years.
I know that you guys have been working closely and SMEs in the center of your businesses. And as data say and as a journalist, whatever I see, I largely see that MSMEs, I very strongly believe personally that MSMEs are very growth engines, which any government is saying. But going ahead, yes, and it looks nice. As you said, COVID-19 in the earlier session also we discussed it. In our business schools and all that we went through, we were profit risk management and stuff. But we really didn't come with COVID-19. No models work because none of us had actually thought. In fact, I can talk about myself personally. I was in office and I was sitting and I said that some part of India will not come to a standstill. And I was absolutely very wrong. And that was my commitment towards continuing my faith in this system, that I could understand that nature has its own strength and bring it to its needs. So anyway, yes, so it has been. So while we talk about digital empowerment, largely when we talk about digital it's the empowerment. And COVID-19 का इसी के लोग पता भाई यह टू एंड ईयर्स स्थिति जो कि पहले एकदम आउट ऑफ जोन बोल सकते हैं और था has come in because of the digitization, because they have picked up the digitization in a big way. And I would like to know from Nilesh that with the rapid rise of this access to internet, digitization with COVID-19 के बाद, how has the how this has disrupted different types of capabilities evolving into like suddenly आपका knowledge would have gone up. What models? How did you tackle this new science or the interest and transactions problem?
Sure. So I think as a platform, ShiftRocket, we are an aggregator. So our job is to work with all the existing supply chain that exists. So the idea is to give access to all of these platforms in one single platform. Now, we already have access to every pin code in India because someone is dealing with those pin codes. So if there is any courier company delivering that pin code, we have access to that pin code through our platform. So the reach was already there. The demand has definitely changed. Again, the same logic of behavioral shift, right? A lot of people who were not online before suddenly came online after COVID. They tried the platform the first time, and that was not a short-term blip. They suddenly realized the convenience of it. They suddenly realized the whole availability, the SKUs available. So there was a large behavior shift from the demand point of view. Yes, as a trend, we did see getting more orders from the city. It is now we can actually. This was the first time we saw orders coming from Mali. The first time we saw orders coming from which was not there prior to this. And we already had the reach there. So now we do have access to more pin codes. We are actively adding more by adding newer partners where our sellers are getting the people reaching out from this particular region in India where you don't have service.
So we keep innovating. How do you tackle it? Like you said, all this happened. Were you ready to tackle this sudden surge, or you did something different than others? Because वो time आया होगा जब आपको probably not ready to the system may not be ready or whichever way.
Yeah, so as a technology platform, I think the problem was more from the on-ground logistics companies. They had to really adjust and expand their capabilities. From a technology point of view, for us it was easy because all I had to do was add more partners to the system to deal with the surge of demand. So there were two startups, there were companies in the Northeast, for example. There was a supply chain company that deals only Northeast and specializes in Northeast. So if they are on my platform, I can just pass on all the orders on Northeast to one particular vendor and they can execute. So being an aggregator, I think we were able to solve a lot of it by allocation logic, by allocating the right demand to right partner all over area. Helped us a lot in streamlining those operations. And with data, we already had that learning. The data could tell me that which supply chain company does better in which particular area. So our allocation became smarter and smarter. And if you allocate right, the performance always comes. I think being in the middle will help us solve that demand surge.
So the So how did your team and how did your organization manage?
So Samjit, I think the context goes a little earlier prior to the COVID. It's on 2015-16 when Geo came in. That's when a big shift started happening. Mobile access happened to a large population. Networks data became cheap. And just around COVID, incidentally, when everything closed down, only marketplace which was working was IndiaMart. And we worked very extensively on all the COVID-related categories. So for the first time, we understood what CPAP machine is, what is a 3-ply mask, what is oxygen concentrator. So our team worked, we stopped all sales and everybody started working on category aggregation of, because demand existed, but the what physical markets were closed. Supply existed, there was no access. So we put that together, we put databases together and we enabled that access for those 8 months. It was really very interesting, meaningful work that we did. And since then, the markets also opened, consumer behavior definitely shifted. So almost 40% additional traffic we got across various categories, even after normalization of COVID. So that penetration in tier 2, 3 is so high now that 2/3 of our traffic, buyer traffic, comes from tier 2, tier 3. And on the buyer traffic, yes, 2/3 of our buyers are coming from tier 2, tier 3 towns. That's the kind of need that exists. Yeah. So, one is he may have been traveling to Delhi. The other is there was a distributor who was sourcing from Delhi, and then he was looking at Northeast, and then somebody was handling Assam, and somebody was handling Dibrugarh, and this